Good morning, everybody. It's Keeper Eric here along with Keeper Grace, and you're looking at our red wolf yard right now. We're going to talk a little bit about red wolves. Be sure to send your questions in. We'll answer all sorts of questions that you guys have. To get them over here, we're going to try to give them a little bit of enrichment, which is, if you don't know what enrichment is, it's stuff we give the animals to keep them active physically and mentally. So we've got these cow legs that were donated. We have some really good friends, the Bentz family, who own Timber Ridge
Longhorns.
Timber Ridge Longhorns, yes, they raise longhorns.
In Hayworth.
And when they butcher longhorns, they'll sometimes give us some of the extra parts. So big thank you to the Bentz family at Timber Ridge Longhorns. And I'm just going to toss this over. There's one.
Dad's coming to check it out.
Yeah, so we've got 3 wolves in the exhibit right now. They're all males. The one who just grabbed the leg is the father. His name is Alohi. And he's about 7-8 years old, in that range. And then he's got 2 boys that are hanging out towards the back. And oh, look, is that looks like they caught a squirrel.
Oh, yep.
Yep, they caught a squirrel. So I guess our enrichment isn't as exciting as their enrichment.
I can zoom.
Can you zoom it? Okay,
Yeah.
he dropped it.
He
That's
dropped
good.
it.
So like right now we've got a dad and 2 brothers that are his sons, and we sent mom and the sister of the 2 boys to different zoos to hopefully breed. Red wolves are very cool. They're a species that is highly endangered. They are the largest animal that's native only to the US. Lots of other animals are endangered, more endangered, but they're found in Mexico and Canada as well. But these red wolves are found only in the United States. And originally they were found in the southeast United States, up into southern Illinois actually. And then as people moved in, they began to hunt them, and when they cleared the land for farming and ranching, and they didn't want the wolves to kill any livestock, so they killed all the wolves. And then in the late 70s, they found out that there were only about 14 red wolves left. So they captured everyone that was left and brought it into captivity in Washington State and started a breeding program. And then in the early 90s, they were able to start re-releasing them. Now they chose a portion of North Carolina out near the Outer Banks, which at the time did not have any coyotes. So red wolves, if they don't have any other wolves to mate with, will mate with coyotes. So the project was a big success for a while, but a couple things started to happen. Number one, the coyotes moved in, as they've pretty much moved into the entire country. And so sometimes they would interbreed. And then people started hunting them, the wolves, again. It's not technically legal, but people who didn't want the wolves near their farms or their livestock would claim that they saw a coyote and kill the wolves. So there's still a huge population, still a small wild population around the Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge in North Carolina, where they started the reintroduction program, but it's very small. And I saw something that they might have births this year, but overall the population's declining, and they're back to being only in zoos like they were before.
So Suzanne, she kind of answered her own question, but she asked if we are going to have any pups this year.
This year, no, we're not having any pups because we've just got boys. There's a group called the Red Wolf SSP, or Species Survival Plan. A lot of our animals are part of an SSP, and then we meet every July and decide which zoos need to breed their animals, which zoos need to not breed, and then they decide which animals need to move so that the animals that do breed keep up the genetic diversity. We want to make sure we're not breeding brothers and sisters, and we try not to even breed like unrelated or distantly related cousins and things like that. We try to make sure that every animal we breed is not related to another animal. And they'll meet in July and make recommendations for next year. So maybe next year we'll bring in a female, but for now it's just the boys.
Alexis is asking, how long do they live both in captivity and in the wild?
In the wild, they'll probably live 10 or 12 years. It's hard to say because there's not a real great population that is not under pressures by people. So in the wild, I'm probably 10 is as long as they're going to live. In captivity, they can live maybe 15, 17, so about the same as a normal dog. They stop reproducing around age 12. So I'd say 12 is considered an old animal, a geriatric animal.
Ricky says they're unusually active this morning. So that kind of a good point on when to see them at the zoo.
Yeah, they're usually active in the mornings. If you come in the winter, when you get here, if you come at 9:30, they'll still be fairly active. During the summer, when it starts to get hot by 9:30 or 10 o'clock, when the guests start to arrive, it's usually starting to get too hot and they just want to lay down. So the earlier you get here, the better. If you're here late in the afternoon, in the spring and the fall and the winter, they'll sometimes be active. And then also when the keepers are around, they tend to get active. So if you're lucky enough to be here when I'm around or one of the other keepers, they'll sometimes be moving.
Jay-Z, I apologize if I pronounced your name incorrectly. How does it work having only males? Are there ever any problems with the alpha behavior?
No. So red wolves are kind of an interesting, different group than the wolves that you typically think about. So these guys, they don't live where there's moose and muskox and things like that they would need a huge pack to hunt. Usually they're hunting rabbits and maybe some deer, if that. So a pack
squirrels like they caught this morning.
Squirrels, yeah, whatever they can catch. So red wolves, a pack consists of mom and dad, and then their offspring from last year, and then any offspring they have from this year. So this is pretty normal. I think these two boys would have left last summer, would have been about the time they would have taken off had they been in the wild. But because they're still with dad, they tend to get along fairly well. Now, if we still had any females, there would definitely be some aggression between them. Dad would have to work to keep the boys from trying to breed with any females. But since it's just them, they get along fairly well.
Some enclosure questions. Yeah. Sarah would like to know how large their enclosure is, and Hillary asks if they like all the mud.
Do they like the mud? We don't like the mud.
I don't like this mud in the spring.
It's actually looking really good right now. When we first get that thaw, it turns into a real mud pit because the wolves are moving through it and there's just nowhere for the water to drain. But now it's looking pretty good. We're starting to grow some grass again. They don't seem to mind a whole lot. They'll lay down in the mud and we'll see them get super muddy. So they don't seem to care. How big is this exhibit? I've not measured it exactly, but it's about half an acre maybe, a little less than that.
Yeah.
Because it's about maybe 2 house plots, about your house and your neighbor's house. That's about
Sarah's daughter is wondering how fast they can run and if their caregivers can interact with them at all.
Well, I'll answer the second part. We try to interact with these animals as little as possible. So you might come and you see us training the tiger, or we will be feeding the sloth by hand or something like that. Those are animals we want to keep a really close relationship with. These wolves, because they're part of a population that could potentially be reintroduced to the wild at some point, is not something we want to be hands-on with. So we don't train them. Any enrichment we give them is natural, so we don't give them any paper, we don't give them any plastic balls. We give them things like these cow legs or ice cubes, things like that. So we want them to remain as wild as possible, even though they're here at the zoo. And how fast do they run? That's a good question.
I was just going to add, that's probably the biggest difference taking care of red wolves versus gray wolves and other wolf species.
Right.
Is that you can train and interact
Right.
with
Now,
gray wolves.
There is a subspecies of gray wolf called the Mexican gray wolf, and those are found in the southwestern United States and northern Mexico. And they're not related to the red wolves at all, but they're also a population that they're trying to reintroduce. They're trying to get them back into a native habitat. So if you do work with with Mexican gray wolves, they're another species that's completely hands-off, that you want them to not associate people with food or anything like that.
Pam is asking, at the zoo, when the wolves howl at the sirens when the ambulance and fire trucks go by, are they doing it because it hurts their ears, or are they doing it for a different reason?
No, I don't think the sirens hurt their ears. I think with a lot of dogs, which wolves and dogs are very closely related, that it's just a natural reaction when you hear something of that pitch that you're going to howl back. If you come here in the evenings and you would howl at them, it's possible that if you do it just right, that if they don't smell you, they might howl back. They might think you're another pack of wolves. And that's just a way for them to where their territory is. So when they hear that siren, it's that same pitch as a wolf howl, and that's why they want to howl back, just to show everybody that this is where their territory is.
Oh, he laid down back there, didn't
Did
he?
he?
I was like, I couldn't find him anymore.
Sometimes if we kneel down, they'll get closer. You want to try that?
Yeah.
Can you do that without losing your picture too much?
Well, I'm trying to zoom out so I don't make people sick.
Yeah.
Sarah's daughter would also like to know how much they eat every day.
How much they eat every day? Well, these legs are a special treat. Usually they just get dog food, plain old dog food. And we give them about 8 to 10 cups a day for these 3 boys. So it's not a whole lot of food that they eat. But obviously they do supplement that with catching stuff in the yard. So small birds or squirrels or things like that too.
Joe would like to know, how did the zoo get the wolves initially? Are these rehabilitated wolves?
No, these animals were all born in captivity. Like I said at the beginning, there was a breeding program, a species survival program. We'll wait for that.
We'll wait for the motorcycle to go by.
Goodness gracious. I am live on the air. So they were all born at other zoos. For example, the male came to us from a zoo in Georgia, and then our previous animals have come from Washington, and there's an endangered wolf breeding center outside of St. Louis that I think we've gotten some wolves from. And so what we do is we trade these animals back and forth to keep the genetic diversity up. And then if we're lucky, we will send them off to other zoos or to the wild to be reintroduced. Now that's kind of stopped lately, but a couple years ago, about 8-10 years ago, we actually took 2 of our pups to North Carolina and introduced them to the wild. We don't think they made it. We've not heard anything from them since, but it was an exciting time for us to take some of our captive animals and try to release them into the wild.
That's a vacuum. I was hoping that was a siren, so the wolves might start howling for you guys. Let us know if you guys have any more questions.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to leave them at the bottom of, post them under the video, and I'll try to get to answering all the questions later that I've missed. And remember that there's a donate button at the bottom of the video where you can donate to the society to help support the animals. If you like the wolves, you can also adopt them at the Miller Park Zoological Society website and help pay for their care. And then don't forget to tune in every Sunday through Wednesday at 10:30. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about pythons.
Yeah, I think we put pythons on the schedule for tomorrow.
Yes, we made a schedule. So if you like the large snake in the Katofer building, we'll be talking about her tomorrow. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll see you then.
Bye.